someone wants to sit in those two seats, they can put the stuff on the floor, if they put it on the chair at the end. We're going downstairs.
You go
But I'm
downstairs
gonna
and you
buy
be
you,
blessed.
I'm gonna buy you a book, and I do know how to do so. Yeah, well, I'm not gonna be, but your book.
Yes, we're just gonna see if any more people trickle in, and then we'll kind of get going here. All right, so thanks for coming. This is going to be fun. I'm Bryce. This is Chuck. Thanks for coming. So our goal in this session, we want this to be really conversational. We believe that social media is it's a dialogue. It's supposed to be back and forth, and so we're going to be real conversational. We're going to ask you some questions. Got some activities we want you to participate in, and we'll kind of see how they go. But if at any point you have a question, if we lose you, if you have no idea what we're talking about, just throw up a hand so that we can just help. We can stop and bring everybody on the same page, and we want to just kind of go with there. We're also just going to be bouncing off each other. We're going to kind of take a topic and then just go with it. So if you have thoughts, we want to hear them. We want to go back and forth on this, and we think it's going to be fun. So the first question, I guess some basic like housekeeping. Because we're talking about social media, it's probably worth mentioning that we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, and we have a website. If you Google Cloud Culture Book, we come right up, and so you'll be able to find us on Facebook. You can stay in touch with us on Twitter if that's something that you do already. And our website is cloudculturebook.com, and on there we have weekly blogs and video stuff where we answer questions that people write to us. So we're always looking for new questions and content to answer so that we can just figure out what it is that people want to know, and that's kind of how we approach this. So I'm going to turn it over to Chuck here, and I guess the first question is, what's social media?
Well, I think the first thing we should establish is we're not computer geniuses. This is not a tech class. We're not going to show you how to do any of these things. Okay? That's really not what that's about, because that would be terribly boring. I wouldn't want to sit through that for sure. Okay? So that's not what this is about. If there's anybody here that it's not part of your lives already, you may have children, grandchildren, friends that already are, and maybe you can glean the need for this dialogue. And the reason we had this dialogue in the first place is because, we're all doing this all day long, and we're texting. You know how many thousands of texts a month teenagers do? You guys might not realize how much you do, but it's in the thousands upon thousands, okay? Not to mention Facebook, Twitter, Vine, Tumblr, all these other platforms that have become so integrated in our lives. And there's been this absolute void in dialogue in the church, okay, regarding where we fit into this. What is this supposed to be and represent in our lives? And so we had this conversation, and we wound up looking at each other and goes, somebody ought to write a book about this. And we looked around and realized that there's a complete void in the dialogue, okay? I've got 3 kids. I've got an 18-year-old and a 16-year-old and a 7-year-old. So I've got a couple teenagers. This is all they've known, okay? This is all they've known. We adults, we're just trying to keep up, okay? And then there's others, particularly pastors, those in ministry, who are just trying to stay afloat themselves and stay attached to technology and media and everything, while trying to pastor a congregation who this person texted something to this person, and now this person's mad at that person, and we have all this going on, all this dialogue, and nobody's talking about it. Nobody's having this conversation. And at the bottom line of the question he just asked me, what is social media? It's about 2 things. I don't care if Facebook and Twitter are gone tomorrow and it's something new. It's about relationships and communication. It's about those two things. That's what it comes down to. No matter what the platform is, or no matter what it'll be 5 years from now, even though it's going to change, it's still going to be about communication and relationships. And if there's two things the body of Christ should be really, really good at, if there's two things that we should set the bar and the standard on of excellence and understanding, it's relationships and communication. And the sooner we realize that, and not worry about how this being about computers and technical and everything, and get it down to what it actually is, you're going to realize this is at the very core of our being. And now, everybody has a voice and a platform to reach people all over the place. And I was standing out there this morning, I was looking out, and we had hundreds and hundreds of people, in the room, and I thought, you know what? Everybody in this room has access to that many people every single day. I mean, let me ask this. Who has at least 200 friends on Facebook? 400 friends. Okay, still some hands. 500. 1,000. Okay, we're getting up into some numbers now. Now,
Who's afraid of Facebook?
we'll talk about some of the...
We're going to get into
There's
that.
some pitfalls, too. Okay, well, who does Twitter? Who has in the hundreds of Twitter followers? Okay. Well, you got somebody. All right, let's get real basic. Who texts? Okay. Big thing. We're going to talk about texting a little bit because it can be a wonderful tool and it can be vastly dangerous as well. Yeah. Especially in the body of Christ. It can. Where we should be the ones setting the example, we should be the ones setting a bar, realizing that our words hold power. And they have a life, they have a shelf life, and they can go into the atmosphere. This crowd, this hub crowd, should understand better than anybody what this new technology brings for us as an opportunity into the atmosphere and what we can change. Okay? So we want to talk about that, and what we're just real hoping in a short amount of time is that the light bulb goes off a little bit, and you go, okay, this is more than telling everybody what I had for lunch today. You know? There's more. There's more than that. Are there any ministers or pastors in the room? Those in ministry in the room? Okay, great. We're going to want to address you specifically in a little bit too.
So Janet brought up a good point. Who has nothing to do with social media? Is there anybody who has nothing to do with it?
God love you.
Up to this point. yeah.
Okay. So this is something that we...
This is going to help me because I'm scared to death of the whole thing. Now, because of how many people can come in and snoop on you and misinterpret what you say, the whole
That's a big
nightmare.
part.
It's huge.
Huge
Yeah.
part.
So for those who are not on this, is this something generally that we want to do? Yes. We want to know more about it? Okay. So as Christians, one of the things that Chuck and I fundamentally believe that, in the Genesis account, hermeneutically, the only thing that we know about God is that it says that God created us in His image. Now, hermeneutics is the study of removing everything that we think we know about what the Scripture says and actually looking at what it says. So we think we know a lot of things about God. He created man in His image. So a lot of us automatically assume that He has 2 legs and 2 arms and shoulder-length brown hair and blue eyes and a nicely scruffy maintained beard. And that's how we think about God initially. But all it says in the Scripture is that God created us in His image. All we know about God is that He's a creator and that He is in fellowship. He Himself is in fellowship with the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. He's a Trinitarian God, right? So we know right from the very beginning that God made us for fellowship. We are designed. What does He say in just a few chapters later in Genesis? He creates man. He creates this wonderful utopia, this paradise, this thing that He looked at, the God, the Creator, who has the highest standards of all, looked at and went, this is good. He looked at it and goes, it's not good that you're alone. So I'm going to make you a companion. Now this is God. We get up there in church and we sing songs, God, you're all I want, you're all I need. And God said, well, clearly you need a partner. You need something besides just me. You need, someone to walk alongside with you. Theologically, that's mind-blowing. We're not going to go there. But that's our foundation, that we were designed for fellowship. And so when social media came about, it was this shift in the way that we did relationships. So prior, if you wanted to communicate with somebody, you called them up. You scheduled coffee. You went and you knocked on their door. You slid a note under their dorm room. You wrote a letter. You did a lot of things that all seem to have a very personal connection. It's my hand writing with my ink on this page that I'm going to give to you. Social media changed all that. It went out the window. Now we just send emails. We send 3-word text messages. Yup, see you later. That's it. It's very fast-paced, and that's okay. But we want to look at a little bit of how do we restore that personal connection too. Because we believe that as ministers, as Christians, one of the things that can really be used, that we can really do to separate ourselves from the world, is to be personal, is to be genuine, is to be open, is to be transparent. What do we have to hide? And social media, like you said, a lot of people can snoop in on your stuff. A lot of people can see what you've been up to. And we think that's okay. Because they should be seeing what I think they should be seeing, and feel free to jump on this. What I think people should see when they look at our Facebook pages is Jesus. Why not? It's an extension of everything else that we do, right? We say, take Jesus to the marketplace. We say, take him to your job, take him to your school, right? That's what we said. That's how we try to live. Why wouldn't we say that about our social media as well?
It's our lives
With
on
our
display.
lives.
Literally our lives on display in a whole new way, in front of hundreds and hundreds of people on a daily basis. I mean, you literally have this unprecedented opportunity that no previous generation, or those in ministry particularly, could have ever conceived or realized was possible to speak blessing and life directly into the lives of hundreds and hundreds of people at any given moment, wherever they are, wherever you are, sitting in an airport, sitting wherever. For all the apprehensions we can have about social media and everything, we want to look at the glass half full of it, and we want you to realize the possibilities as well. Yes, there are dangers. I've been on the mission field. There's dangers there too. Okay? There are dangers associated with any way that we step out, present ourselves, display ourselves, go out there and do anything. But the reality is, with it, there is tremendous possibility for blessing and everything else. For as many ways as I've seen, and I've seen Christians act horribly on social media and through texting. But I've also, for as much as I've seen that, I've seen people who get it and have done some of the most amazing and powerful things from across the globe on behalf of someone else as well. It's a powerful, powerful tool we have. Now, some of you younger folks in here, you just don't know any other way. This is all you know. And so you have where this is like this new tool for us, and we're going, oh my gosh, we could have never dreamed we could do this. This is amazing. This is all you know. And that's phenomenal. It's already integrated into your life. And what's tough for those in ministry, like yourselves, some of you who are pastors and those in ministry, I'm on staff as an associate pastor. My parents are senior pastors of our church. So I'm very integrated in the ministry in that capacity. One of the things I think most all of our congregation has in common is this right here, all day long, every day. And for all of the gossip and the things that go on in church bodies and problems between people and relationships and everything, this needs to be pastored. This new platform needs to be pastored. It doesn't mean you have to be proficient. It doesn't mean you have to be a computer expert in every platform and thing going on. You don't have to understand it all. You just have to understand the mechanics of the fact that this is how people are communicating now. And that can be a wonderful thing, and it can also be a very painful thing. And one of the things that we talk a lot about, and the reason that we see so many problems, not that I want to dwell a lot on problems today, but maybe this will help you in your own use of it, is the idea of context. Context is a humongous problem because, and you younger folks will know this particularly, not realizing as much as those of us that are older, but our vocabulary has been reduced. It has been reduced down to almost nothing. Yeah, I mean, down to entire sentences and thoughts and ideas and opinions and expressions have been brought down to almost nothing, to the point where I know what I meant, I know what I mean when I say this, but the person on the receiving end isn't getting everything. They're getting this fraction that I've reduced it to. And that can be so dangerous. And it can be so painful in terms of a relationship and how we communicate with each other. When people text out of anger or out of emotion, once you hit that button, it's not coming back, right? And you may not get to completely explain yourself, what you meant and what it meant in your mind. But what the people on the receiving end get is a bunch of abbreviations and a broken down version. And when context gets lost, there can be some very painful results. And I think if anybody should be setting the bar, it should be the body of Christ. For how we communicate with each other, how we speak to each other, how we text each other, especially when there's emotion involved. It only takes a second. Take a breath, look at that again, and either not send it, or the difference between being understood and misunderstood might be a couple of words, right? Some of you have already had the experience. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Some of you have gotten upset about something and thrown it out on Facebook, just shot from the hip and just put it out there. And now hundreds of people, without getting any context, are affected by it. That's why this needs to be pastored. That's why I believe we want to help equip those in ministry particularly, because you have a voice over hundreds, if not thousands of people in a different way. You know, just like you pastor relationships between those that are in marriages and things like that. I believe this landscape needs to be pastored because if Christians can show a level of maturity, spiritual maturity and restraint, sometimes too, in what we post and what we put out there that has a very long shelf life, it's powerful. Even after you've changed your mind or your opinion on something, those words can be living out there.
So Chuck is so when it boils right down to answer the question, what is social media? That was kind of our preamble, so to speak. Social media is, we believe, or the way that we classify it, a lot of people use Facebook and Twitter, LinkedIn, Pinterest, you know, maybe Foursquare. You may have never heard of any of these, that's okay. A lot of people use it a lot of people define it as something where there's a piece of software interacting between two people. And I think that's a safe way to say it. If you are not having face-to-face communication, or you can't hear the tone in somebody's voice on the other end of the phone, it's probably social media. Now, that said, we're shocked to discover that by some conservative studies, over 92% of all communication is nonverbal.
Wow, that's sad.
Think about that. 92% is nonverbal. So I can walk into a room, kind of like this, and what do you know?
You need a cup of coffee?
I need it's probably true. You just know things. I didn't have to tell you how I'm doing. You could just see it on me. 92%. Yeah, go ahead.
That's actually pretty much almost in the percentage always, even before social media.
Yeah.
But I don't doubt that.
People just weren't aware of how transparent they really were.
Yeah. But see,
Now it's even higher though.
Yeah, I'm sure it's higher now.
the old idea that you wear your heart on your sleeve, you've probably heard that before. It's very true, and all of us do. Even those people who, there's certain people that will say that about, oh, that person wears their heart on their sleeve. Well, the truth is we all do, just some more than others. That's all this really comes down to. 92% is nonverbal, so what do you do when you remove the element of being able to see or hear someone? What does that do to your ability to communicate? And that's the world that we live in, where we get online and we have 140 letters. On Twitter, for example, 140 letters. That's like half a sentence to communicate with somebody, and they can't see you. They're supposed to somehow understand what it is that you're trying to say. So our question to you, and be thinking about this, because we're actually going to ask for answers, is what do you do to make sure that they can get it, that they understand what you mean? Yeah.
Oh, I was going to say that's why I don't like texting, but I felt like there's no way you can avoid it because I used to did not have a text message plan. But my friend would text me, it would cost me lots of money.
Yeah.
So I was forced to get a text plan, so it would lower the expense.
Yeah.
And then you know how they have like facial expression that you can add into
Yeah.
text? Like to show your emotion, whether you're sad or laughing.
Yeah.
But still, I hate texting.
Yeah.
It's still not the same, is it?
No.
You know what I tell my kids when it comes to texting, because of course they're doing it by the thousands and everything. And I text a lot too, and we use it. it has its conveniences and it has its place and everything. But what I tell my kids is, if it matters, if it's important, or if you're upset, don't text. You know, if it's important, that's not the way to go. And unfortunately, it's just become the norm, especially with young people, to just rely on that as a sole form of communication. Yes?
So what do you tell them? What's the alternative?
The alternative? At least call.
Okay.
At least verbalize. Because there's so much less opportunity to be misunderstood. You know, if it's important news, especially something tragic or anything like that, I'll tell you what happened, how this all started. The St. Charles Conference, was anybody there at the last conference with Heidi? Okay, that Thursday that I came up, I left the hospital that day. We had just lost a dear friend from our church. He had just passed away. That moment, I'm in the hospital with the family, okay? And I had to leave from there and head straight up here for the first session of the conference. I'm in my car, and it was already on Facebook about this person passing. Now, I knew there were immediate family and close friends who had not been notified yet in a proper way. And there it was on my phone. So sad to hear about so-and-so. And the person didn't mean anything by it. It was a condolence, you know what I'm saying? It was a condolence, but it was shot from the hip. No thought, no sense of, there's not an etiquette even out there to say, you know what, we need to take a step back. There's family that doesn't even know yet. You know what I'm saying? And so that's what started this whole conversation. I was just so flabbergasted to realize this is where we're at, you know? And so that's what I tell my kids, if it matters, if it's important, if you're upset, don't use that medium. As wonderful as it is, that's not the place
You
to
don't
use
want
it.
everybody in the world to see it.
Yeah.
Also, don't
Yeah.
do it.
Sometimes it's well-meaning and people just don't realize this. They've never been told. That's why we feel like we need to start a movement here. And if it stems from the body of Christ first, I think it's going to have a much more lasting sense of how things should be in some order, you know, into how we should conduct ourselves. You know, it's not just about how we represent ourselves personally online. It's a code of decency, even in a lot of cases, you know?
Absolutely.
So in other words, what you're saying is what you really need to do is develop a code of ethics for the texting or for the social.
Well, even if
media.
it's personal.
Yeah.
Well,
just-
I mean, but if you could reestablish, because
Yeah.
many people are not aware of
Yeah.
what they're doing, they're really ignorant.
Yeah, if I could
They
say
don't
this to a
know.
million people,
Many children I have said, you know, you put
Yeah.
what you put on your pictures, but you know, when you grow up and your employer looks at those pictures
Right.
Yeah.
from 4 years ago,
Yeah.
they think about you in a different light.
Yeah.
So it is really, and there's no emotion tied to a lot of things. Either
Right.
it's too emotional or not enough emotion when it comes to a lot of situations that I've read.
when this generation has a unique, there's something very different about this generation. They have a need to be seen in a way that has previously never existed, because they can be, you know? And Bryce, you can tell them better as far as statistically or whatever, the fact that for all the connections we have, we are lonelier than,
Yeah.
you know.
Absolutely.
If you want to point that out, you found out some of that stuff.
Well, I mean, a lot of it is, actually, we were just having a conversation over at our table in the bookstore this morning with a gentleman who was telling us about a comic strip that he had just seen. And it's a cartoon strip, and the character was sitting there looking at his cell phone and going, I have 250 friends on Facebook, and not one of them can pick me up at the airport. Now,
So how many friends do you really have?
that's a good question.
It's a loss of intimacy.
So one of the things, you know, as we've thought through this, and truth be told, I don't think that Cloud Culture is a brilliant book. And let me just put it out there to say that, like Chuck said, we're not rocket scientists. We're not social media savants. We're just a couple of guys who saw a need and started thinking about this. And I believe that if you read Cloud Culture, what you'll get out of it is a very honest, an uncensored, honest approach to a thought process. It's just kind of looking into a conversation. You can see how, as these emails went back and forth, this book just developed. But that's one of the things that we really believe, the conclusion that we've come to is proximity does not equate to intimacy. I'll say it again. Proximity does not equate to intimacy. Now we've come to this place, like in the olden days. Uh-oh.
10 years ago.
So 1995. In the olden days, when you knew somebody, you knew them. How did you know them? By being with them. They were your neighbor. They lived across the street. You knew when they liked to cut their grass. You knew that they made the best barbecue on the block because you could smell it. You were close to them, and as a result, you inevitably ended up with your lives intertwined. It took time. It took effort. It took a lot of things to get you to your friendship, solid friendship. Now, hi, what's your name? Yeah, oh yeah. Hey, you want to be my friend on Facebook? Oh yeah, sure. I don't know a thing about you. Hey, you want to be my friend? Do you know his last name?
But you can go on Facebook and figure it out, what they're like.
Well, and that's
You
an
find out
interesting
everything
point.
about
Everything about it.
And that is an interesting point because then you get into what is out there. What do you put out there? What do people put out there about you? Again, Chuck and I don't think that's a bad thing. If you're living as a Christian, if you're living your life authentically, doing your very best, and even that's not good enough, but you're doing what you can to just pursue God and allow Him to pursue you, then it's okay. Let people look. I want my life to be something where you can look at it and see Jesus. That's what I want. And if that means that you're scrolling through my photos, and if anybody went through, this is my own profile. I just pulled it up as kind of a demonstration. Has everybody seen a Facebook page at some point? Yeah? Okay. So this is a Facebook page, and there's hundreds of social media sites out there, so you can take your pick. But this is mine, and anybody who is a friend of mine can see very clearly that I was at the Hub Conference this week. They know that because I keep posting stuff about it, because it's important to me. And that is the reason, you can see there, here I am. This is during Roland Baker when he was talking on that other day.
Thursday.
You were on the ground.
Yeah, you were right.
So he was talking. I thought it was really impactful, so I snapped a little picture and wrote a caption and put it out there. Anybody who's a friend of mine on Facebook now knows what I'm into. I have coworkers on here. They now know that I love Jesus. They didn't know it before. They know it now. So that kind of bridges us into the next little piece here. And I saw your hand. I did see that. Why is social media important? And I'm looking for responses. I want to know what you think. Why is social media important? Why do we need it?
Because it keeps you in contact with people who live really far away.
Keeps you in contact with people who live far away.
It's a good thing.
Yeah.
It's a very good thing. Yeah.
Anybody else?
It's the wave of the future.
Wave of the future.
No, it's the wave of the present.
Wave of the present.
We don't know what the future's going to be.
Got to take it in a very broad form.
Uh-huh.
It's a form of advertising.
That too.
It is.
No doubt.
I believe that's the way President Obama won the first election.
Amen.
Okay. So it has what? What about that is significant? Influence. Great. What else?
International effects.
International effects. Yeah, go ahead.
For like youth workers, it's an excellent way to get to know more about the students and also to continue to minister because sometimes what the kids won't tell you face to face, you'll see on Facebook.
That's
You'll
huge.
be able to minister to them in a way that you might not have been able to.
And that's something we're actually going to address directly, like in an activity, shortly. But what you bring up there is really important, and especially for those in ministry too. We did a whole fall campaign of radio interviews in markets all over the country. Hired a publicist, spoke to millions of people with this, and one of the things that kept coming up over and over and over, we said it every time, for a lot of people, it's a long time between Sunday and Sunday. Okay? For church. And this gives opportunity for the very thing you're talking about, especially for churches and other ministries. Great that a church has a Facebook page and posts that they've got something going on, a brunch or an event or whatever. But the idea that you can bridge that gap between time and speak into people's lives and communicate and be involved and directly in their lives, you know, in between, huge,
Yeah.
absolutely huge.
So we've talked a little bit before about what?
She had a-
Oh yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, so, what I was thinking when you were saying about, like, the negatives of Facebook and things like that, or the negatives of texting, I just thought, like, man, there's actually some positives to texting, because you can reach out to those people who are so closed, and they don't want to, like, even discuss things with you, or, like, maybe a family member who just, you know, some people will call it, you can't even call them because they won't answer. And if you send them a text, at least they can see what you were saying,
Yeah.
you know, and,
Yeah.
so I thought that was really important to just, agree on.
And that's a great segue because what I think we need to get into, and the conversation that I want to have today, isn't about the negatives of social media. Yeah, there are some. People can snoop your stuff. That's definitely a negative. It really, I mean, it definitely is. It's not always the most comfortable thing.
I don't know anything.
Sure.
Let's say I wanted to have one where it's for people who know me and an intimate family.
Yeah.
Can I have one that way and keep that secure and
Yes.
separate from
Yeah.
the general, because it's huge?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for specific questions like that, if you want to pop by the booth afterwards,
Okay.
we'll
That'd be
we
great.
can even
Show you
walk
how.
you through some of that, so that we're not just going to say, yeah, you can do it. Go on the help page. We'll actually help you do it. Yes, you can do that. You can have a private account so that nobody can see it except for the people that you choose, and that's a wonderful thing because you can limit then who has access to your information.
You can discuss family things, other things that are.
You can
more
keep it
Yeah,
private.
because that's the thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
can.
Yeah.
There's a
And
very
you can
private
delete
system.
people.
Yes. Yeah, you have total control.
Yeah.
I just want to add something really quick
Yeah,
that I
please.
can see another benefit is maybe people here might not feel very strongly is freedom of association.
What do you mean by that?
Do you guys know that Facebook is blocked in China? You can't use Facebook in China.
Didn't know that.
It's a freedom.
So I think in a sense that you can have your community that you choose. You can have choose people who can associate with you and you associate with them. I think here it's just common, nothing special. But in lots of the part of the world,
Yeah.
it is not common.
Yeah,
and
it's
it's
true.
Yeah, we don't give it a second thought. We don't realize
Yeah.
what a privilege.
YouTube is blocked in China.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's what?
Facebook is
It's blocked.
It's
It's
blocked.
Not
That
available
means you
for
can't
Facebook.
log in. You need a special
Yeah.
program, a software to help you even to just get on Facebook.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
I talk to guests, the people who have a Facebook or family. I'm a grandma, great grandma, but I watch my grandkids, they're so busy. You know, I'm busy on the phone, pray for someone, call people at home, call people there. I'm very busy. And I want to be folks to God. What I hear on the phone or someone in the house. But when I see Facebook and I see too much communication with Facebook, I pray for this people to be careful. Be careful, my granddaughter. I don't say my granddaughter because I got to Gracie and all that. Be careful. Be careful. She be more folks and wise. Not because I want to say the better kids, because I love teenager kids. But we're too busy. We're too busy.
Yeah.
What do we do for God? For people crying to the wall, hungry, sick, and dying. You know, I want to be keep busy. Pray God. What do you want from me? So we want to be busy tonight. I'm here, Lord. I'm here, Lord. If my heart something will cry to me. I got 10 grandkids. They're all busy. I'm not saying that,
Yeah.
you know, I want to talk to them, I want to care for them. But my brother and I have is okay, Grandma, I'll be good. They're busy. I want not friend nobody. I love everybody. I'm not talking about friends.
Can I call this open session for a second?
No, I'm not talking about friends. I love.
Can I just
just respond? Because I just
Yes,
been
please.
being blessed by this woman this whole weekend. It's like, this is so good because these young people here, they're going to start, and as you start to learn this, you can teach them on how to show Jesus in all this. And you know what, Grandma?
I love this kid. I love this kid. I love everybody.
With my grandma, I lost my grandma a long time ago, but, you know, telephone, we talked all the time. And it is hard, kids aren't going there. But you can learn just a little bit with the texting, and you're, because my mom is still here, and she's crazy on this thing. She's 85 years old. And she knows more on this than what I can comprehend.
It's good too.
And so, you know, I get a little mad though when the kid's in the other room, you know, walk over here and say hi to your grandma. But they're, you know, so this, you have an awesome heart. You have an awesome heart. And this is an awesome place for this because you can learn this too.
I love this. My grandkids keep saying, I call my friend, I text my friend. I love very much.
All right, guys, teach us.
Okay.
If I can speak as a dad for a minute in that capacity.
I just want to say one thing that I do with my kids. When they text me, my kids, I don't answer the phone. I didn't text them back. And they keep texting me, and I don't text them back. So they have to call me. And they say, Mom, why don't you answer my text? I said, you know the rule. You have to call me. Because I need to hear your voice.
It's a different dynamic.
And they do it, because they need to talk to me. They have to do it. My kids, you know, and my daughter's doing the same thing to her kids.
Good.
And I says, this is SAS. We accept it or we don't.
Yeah.
Especially when we can control, and that's our family.
Yeah.
We still having control over that. It's not a control that you want it, but you don't want to lose that relationship.
Right.
No, and I think that's a misunderstanding with a lot of young people is that, as a dad, I've got a responsibility to my kids. Well, I think a lot of young people see if mom or dad's on Facebook or they want to be connected with you or whatever, it's just to hover over and keep an eye or whatever. Yeah, okay. There's a certain amount of reality to that that's a responsibility that I have, that if my kids are going to post something that they shouldn't post, they're going to hear from me very quickly. I want that off there right now, or whatever. But it's also the connection standpoint, you know, that is wonderful. Our oldest daughter's at college right now. And so that connection we have through media is a wonderful thing. But I hope young people can start to understand that parents and adults and everybody's not just on there to hound for that only reason. It's part of relationship now, and it's part of being connected. Now with that comes parenting as well. It's going to exist, and it's part of it.
What a lot of people don't realize is once they put something out there that's inappropriate, they can't get it back.
But we're going to talk about that. I want to hold on to that because we're going to get to that in a little bit.
But parents, real quick, you don't have to be good at every platform in social media. You don't have to be experts on 10 different things and do all of it. What you can do as part of your parenting, though, is if you're on one or two things, how you represent yourself and your faith and your family, and that parents your kids too. That teaches your kids too, how you represent yourself. It's not that you've got to be proficient in every new thing out there. If you're on one, be it Facebook or whatever, be the godly person and parent you can be on that one platform. Your kids see that as well.
So, what is your name? Rebecca. Rebecca hit on a really good point. Social media is not all bad. That's where we're starting. That's our basis. It's not all bad. So I want to tell you a story real quick. It's one of my favorite stories. I got an email on Facebook. Somebody sent me a message one day. I didn't recognize the name. I opened it up. It was a minister in Pakistan. And he just wrote me a message. He said, "Are you a Christian?" So I wrote back and said, "Yes." That was it. He wrote me back after that, and he explained his situation. He's a pastor in a hostile region in Pakistan. And they're not friendly towards Christians. Pakistan is predominantly an Islamic nation. Right? He's a pastor, Christian guy, trying to raise a church here. He needs help. It needs prayer. Sometimes they need money. Sometimes they need Bibles, right? Through Facebook, this guy found me, and now he writes me when he needs stuff. Hey, can you please be praying for us? I've never met him. Never had the pleasure of looking him in the eye. But here he is, my brother on the other side of the world, that I can help him. I know what he needs when he needs it. I can make some phone calls. I can put him in touch with people. Same thing just happened a week ago. I got a message from a woman in Nigeria. Same story. Are you a Christian? Yes. I don't know how these people are starting to find me, but they are. I'm thrilled about it. So here are people that I may never, ever, ever get to shake their hand. I may never get to put my arms around them. But my life, the things that I say and do, can impact not only them, but in the case of the Pakistani pastor, his congregation, his flock. We can get news in and out. We can get them supplies if they need supplies. And it's all on Facebook. So that's just my story. Has anybody else has anybody else thought through or seen an example of wow, what a great way to use social media? Has anybody seen any of that? Yeah.
I have a friend from England that I met over YouTube, and we started talking last year, and during the summer, well, not last year, 2 years ago, during the summer of last year, she came over with another friend from Germany to my house and stayed 3 weeks.
Cool.
And we took her to church. She's not a Christian, and she felt the love of God, and she didn't know exactly what it was, and so she went back home, and right after that, she's like, I want to come back. I want to come back and see all of you. You're like my family across the ocean. So she's actually coming back from June to July, staying an entire month, because she felt the love of God so strong here. So she told me exactly that she felt like something is telling her to come back here.
How cool. So somebody that she met online.
Oh, and then also I
There's
met another
more.
girl. I met another girl online. Her name's Charlotte, and we just started talking through Skype actually, and she's actually here right now at Hub. So she's down at the other VU.
Yeah, cool. Cool. So here's 2 people that she met on the internet. She connected with on the internet and has had an actual impact on their real life.
And you wonder why they can't use it in China.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So for me, on Facebook, I'm on there all the time. But lately, God has been dealing with me to put in my testimony and make a book out of it for women and young women and things like that. And so I'm just like, God, it's a long story. I really don't want to start it. But then it just so happens that when I'm on Facebook, I'm like, I have a testimony, and I was trying to talk to somebody about it, and they're like, I don't want to call or anything. I'm like, so then I have to type it. So I was just typing away. To make a long story short, 2 people have come to Christ through this, and last week one of them joined me at John Eckhart's ministry at 79th and Ashland, and he's just like, I don't know about this. It's definitely more interesting than the other churches I've been to. So I'm just gonna let God just do the orchestration.
You don't know the ways that can actually work out. I mean, outside of direct ministry aspects, my wife and I adopted, we got 12 kids, but we adopted a little girl from China. And we blogged the process and everything, put it into social media as we were going through it and everything. And it wound up, through the course of the blog, 15,000 people were following the blog. And I know of at least 2 families that were moved to adopt themselves as a result of the story and the process of what we were going through. You just don't know. I mean, you don't know how God's going to use what you didn't even intend to use that way. We weren't appealing to anybody to do that. We wouldn't do that. You know what I'm saying? But the information got into their hearts. They felt the call to do the same thing, and families were changed because of it. You just don't. That's the amazing thing about it. You just don't know.
Sure. What about, you got one? Him. Wow. So let me ask you a question. Do you feel like you're super special and qualified to run this? You feel like if anybody's struggling with depression, that you are somehow the person that they should talk to? No. Do you feel like you're just kind of living your life and you happen to do something that worked out for you, that made sense to you, and it resonated with other people?
God put it on my heart to do it, so I never expected it to be happening.
That's kind of how social media works. You do the thing that works for you. You do the thing that the Lord has caused you to be interested in. And it's amazing how many people it resonated with. You've just heard about over 1,000 people who have been impacted just in, what, by 4 people? Well, you had 15,000, so, okay, 20,000 people. That's a lot of people. Just 4 people in this room, that's it.
4 quick stories.
4 quick stories. Unbelievable reach. And that's why we think that social media needs to be grabbed onto by the church. Now, I was in college when social media came out. I was the target demographic. It was 2005 when it came out. I was the guy that they were looking to hit, and they got me. And I remember going back to my church that summer after school let out for a break, and specifically hearing deacons and elders in my church say, "Are you on that Facebook?" And I said, yeah, I am. And they were like, "I would get off of that if I was you." You know, it's like, whoa, why? And they're like, it's take up too much of your time. Well, maybe, and I'm in college, that's all I got is time. Or I heard things like, "You don't know what government agency is spying on you." Oh my goodness. You know, and it was just kind of generally shunned, at least in my church. It was generally shunned. Don't do that social media. It's just a passing fad. Well, newsflash, it's not.
No.
It's definitely here. And the church has quietly, slowly crept into the social media scene, hoping that nobody would remember that 5 years ago they were blasting it and saying, "Don't do it." Well, it has an incredible reach. It has an incredible reach. We can make friends in Europe. We can talk to pastors in Pakistan. We can start groups for people who are struggling with something, support groups. Just met a woman today who's using Facebook and social media to minister to abused women. Because these women are afraid, they won't talk to anybody around them because they're afraid that it's going to get back to their abuser. So they won't talk to anybody. But they'll get online. They'll go to the bathroom and lock themselves in the bathroom, and they'll just get on Facebook and send her a quick note. She can minister to these women from across the world. Really powerful stuff. So what we want to start to get into now, and maybe you can take this next little bit, is how do we do it? How do we do it? So you're an evangelist. We met earlier. You said that this is something that you realize that you need to be. You need
Gotta
this.
jump in. Gotta jump in.
The water's warm. Come on in. It's fine.
I'm ready. Got my suit on.
There.
Yeah, you know what? As someone who's on staff with the church, I can say this is no time for the church, institutionally or body personally, to bury our heads in the sand. It's just not the time for us to do that because it's too tremendous of a tool and an opportunity. Now, some of you younger folks, I hope with everything we talked about today, you can realize that you may need to restrain yourself at times, be more careful at times. You may be able to put into words some things you wouldn't even say to your friends in front, face to face, but you might have a little more freedom to be as a witness and things in social media. Great, you know, absolutely. You're gonna see this in a whole different way, obviously. But this is no time to bury our heads in the sand. But for some of the stories we just talked about, which seem like very big things, what about the absolutely every single day stuff? Because the majority of what's put out there is the most mundane parts of our lives. Okay. People are Instagramming what they're having for lunch and putting it out there. Or, I'm heading to the gym to work out, whatever. Okay, 20 posts a day of the mundane parts of our life. Here's what we want to get across. That's fine. That's your life on display. People are seeing our lives. And those are part of our lives. Don't not do those things. Don't not post the everyday parts of your lives or what your kid just did or whatever else. That's great. But look, if you look at, if I pull up my Facebook page right now, for example, what you're going to see at the top of it is my wife and kids and me. You're going to see my family. That's my life, right? Okay. What we don't want to do. Are we coming up there? Hey, there's all of us. Okay. So This is my life. You know, we're not saying don't post your days and what you do and all that stuff. That's all great. So what we're not going to do is hand you a formula, okay, do this every day on social media. Okay? We're not going to ask anybody to commit to a 10-point thing to do, because that just wouldn't last or don't work. What we want, and what I think will resonate more in the atmosphere and in this landscape, is that if our relationship with God is at its right place, it will spill over naturally into social media. Does that make sense? Okay, my relationship with my family. I mean, imagine if you scour my Facebook, my Twitter, and everything and find no trace of my wife. Well, that's a red flag, a mile high, isn't it? Why wouldn't this primary relationship, I've been married for 21 years, why would there be no trace of it in my social? Well, of course there is. Of course it's all, you're going to find out real fast, I'm married, I have kids and stuff. Well then, if our relationship with God is the core and primary relationship of our being, shouldn't that spill over just as naturally into social media? That's what we want.